Hello, here we are in Liverpool on March the 2nd, 2013. Today is a really exciting day because for the first time we brought over to the northwest of England a machine called the Lucid Light device. Now we know it as Lucia. It's also known as the hypnagogic light device, and it is simply the most amazing new piece of technology imaginable.
Yeah, that was really amazing.
Because what it does, unlike other pieces of technology, is it opens your mind rather than opening anything else. You actually exist within this machine and you have an experience within the machine.
Well, I think it's pretty indescribable, really.
The story behind it is, around about 4 or 5 years ago, I was approached by a friend of mine called Evelyn Alassa Vallerano, who's one of the world's leading authorities on near-death experience, and she lives in Geneva. She told me that an associate of hers called Dr. Engelbert Winkler had read my first book, Is There Life After Death? The Extraordinary Science of What Happens When You Die. He was extremely intrigued by something I'd written in my book regarding near-death experiences and near-death experiences in children. Because effectively what had happened was when Winkler was a very, very young child, he'd had a near-death experience. And for most of his life, this thing had fascinated him. In fact, to such an extent that he did his doctorate in psychology in order to understand what happened to him all those years ago.
There was a door, just like a tunnel opening, and there were small entities in that tunnel. And I looked at them, and it was totally usual for me, and I knew immediately, oh, they're coming to grab me, to take me. And I told my mother, hey, look at them, they are coming to take me. My mother panicked immediately, and she said, don't look there. And in that moment I sensed her excitement and her anxiety, and then I lost consciousness, and I went into kind of tunnel and light experience which was totally overwhelming. And I think this was the cause, and especially the after effect of this, because the after effect was that when I was well again, and on the first day I went out, immediately, without any forewarning, there was a kind of experience like everything which I see is not true the way I see it, and it induced a immense panic, because for me, as a consequence, I'm not true either. So I'm alone. What's the matter? And I went home to my ma, told her something strange happened. Everything is not real now anymore. What shall I do? And she told me, drink a cup of tea and go to bed, which convinced me that she did not know what I was talking about, and I felt even more miserable. So that was the beginning, and also the beginning of my interest in what's that. So when I studied psychology, I focused on what's going on in the brain when such kind of things happen.
He then contacted me, and I was invited over to try out a machine that he had invented with an associate of his, Dr. Dirk Prokol, who is a consultant neurologist. So here we have a circumstance of a consultant neurologist and a consultant psychologist getting together to devise a machine that is able to stimulate the brain to work in certain ways to give either out-of-the-body experiences, or more importantly, something called hypnagogic effects. Now what a hypnagogic effect is just before you go to sleep at night, or just before you awake in the morning, you're in this liminal state where you're not quite asleep and not quite awake. Now for many of us, what happens in these circumstances is you'll suddenly see profiles of faces, you will see coloured lights, you will see scenery. This is called a hypnagogic state. Now what effectively this machine does, it's designed to actually generate the hypnagogic state while you are wide awake. Now ordinarily how the hypnagogic state works is it's brought about by the release of something called melatonin in the brain. Now melatonin is the substance that makes you go to sleep. But effectively, if you can have your brain excrete melatonin, or more precisely your pineal gland, to give this particular drug off, this particular neurotransmitter, you go into a sleep state while you're still awake. This is exactly what the Lucid Light device does. The guys invited me over, and they gave me one of the strongest lucid light experiences possible. And I sat in front of the light, and for about 2 or 3 minutes, nothing was happening. All I was seeing was white light. And then suddenly, from my right peripheral vision was a flash of blue light, then a flash of red light. The two lights came together and they actually started to swirl. Now, any of you that know about the near-death experience will know something called the tunnel effect. This is what exactly I was experiencing. But it got stranger, because then I suddenly found in my extreme right periphery vision was what I would call a scotoma, because I have classic migraine, and a migraine scotoma is when your vision starts to break down and it starts to move. I started to look, and I asked them, could I look down at this particular light? I was told I could because my brain had encoded, my pineal gland had encoded the information from the light machine. I then looked down, and I still today cannot believe what I saw. I saw, for want of a better term, the astral plane. I was hovering over a planet, probably tens of thousands of miles up in the air. I could see the curvature of this planet, and the planet's surface was like a chessboard. And along the chessboard were blue lights, shimmering blue lights. Now, if anybody has read any Carlos Castaneda, they'll know something called the lights of the world. This is what I was seeing. I was so disturbed by this that I actually grabbed the sides of the chair. I was holding on for dear life. I then moved away from that image, and I started to feel that I was rising out of my body. I genuinely believed that I was jumping up and down in the chair. I was having the start of an out-of-the-body experience. What did I do next? Well, I'm a coward, and what I did was I said, please switch the machine off because this is disturbing me so much. They then switched the machine off, and afterwards we started talking about the event. And as they were talking about the event, something very curious started to happen. I started feeling vibrations in the centre of my forehead. These vibrations continued for the rest of the day. They'd come on and off, but they'd come in and off. My pineal gland had been activated. That's the only thing I can explain as to these sensations that were happening. That night I went to bed and I had the most vivid dreams I've ever had. And what did I dream about? I dreamt about snakes. Large snakes. Now, in my next book, I'll be dealing in detail with exactly the symbolism of this. In my next book, the infinite mind field. But today, we're just going to be looking at the lucid light device, talking to the guys who invented it, because they're actually here with us today, and also talking to some people before and after they go into the lucid light experience. So this is going to be the real deal. This is not anything that's been scripted. These are real people that have never used this machine before. Let's see how they experience the lucid light device.